On February 5, 1990, in Houston, Texas, an 18-year-old girl named Shauna Holtz was running along the railroad tracks, signaling to vehicles to stop. One of the vehicles finally stopped. The terrified young woman explained to the driver that a man had tried to kill her. The young woman, who had a dog leash tied around her neck, looked like she had been through an ordeal. They both went to the nearest police station. There, the young woman was interviewed by police officers so she could explain what had happened. The young woman explained to the officers that a week earlier, on January 29th, she was in California when she saw a truck at a rest stop. She spoke to the driver, who told her his name was Dusty and that he was headed to Arizona. She asked to go with him, and the driver agreed. As the hours passed, the young woman fell asleep in a rear compartment of the truck. Taking advantage of her sleep, the truck driver went to the compartment and began to chain her up. He managed to do this while she was still asleep. In addition, the driver gagged her with a horse bit. This was only the beginning of a long torture. The truck driver used whips to beat her and needles and hooks to pierce her. He also abused the young woman. The young woman told the police that she was there for 6 days. Then the truck driver took her to his house. There, he chained her up again to continue raping her. He also cut her hair with a razor. The truck driver decided to take her back to the truck to continue torturing her while he was on his work route. When he made a stop alone to receive a shipment, the young woman realized that the driver had not tied her up properly. She took advantage of the opportunity and managed to escape. The young woman gave a description of the truck and driver who had kidnapped her. The police arrested a man who matched Nicole's description, but when she saw him, she denied that it was the same person. The police let the man go after verifying that he had no arrest warrants or anything else that would lead them to suspect that he was the same person. To everyone's surprise, Nicole told investigators to abandon the search, as she did not want to see her torturer again. 14-year-old Regina K. Walters and her boyfriend were on the road fleeing from home. They were asking different vehicles to give them a ride. This is where a driver allowed the two young people to get into his truck. It was the same man who had kidnapped Nicole. Regina's mother, Caroline, seeing that her daughter was not at home, tried to locate her by calling Regina's friends and her father, who was living in Houston. Their responses alerted her mother, as no one knew Regina's whereabouts. The mother reported her daughter missing on February 3, 1990. She told one of the agents that 2 nights before her disappearance, they had argued because late at night, Regina wanted to leave the house to visit a friend. Her mother refused, so they began to argue. In the end, the mother agreed to her daughter's request. Detective Suzanne Jackson was assigned to the case. Despite her rebelliousness, Regina always called her family to let them know she was okay. This time she didn't. Her mother began putting up flyers around town, offering a reward to see if anyone had seen her daughter. 5 days after her disappearance, Regina's mother received a call informing her that Regina had been seen with 2 men a few days earlier. Another call gave her the exact address of a party where Regina had been seen 2 days earlier. However, when the police arrived at the residence, no one answered. It had been rented by a man named Billy. Billy's last name was Giggs, and he had a girlfriend named Urana Sweet. The name Ricky Lee Jones, a friend of the couple, came up. They were wanted for car theft. Agents waited at Giggs' apartment until he returned. However, while patrolling the area, officers located 17-year-old Billy and his girlfriend Urana. Both were taken into custody and questioned about the whereabouts of Regina and their accomplice, Ricky Lee Jones. They told the officers that both Regina and Jones had fled to Mexico, as they were in love. Jones was 18 years old, so being with a 14-year-old minor could get him into serious trouble. Apparently, the plans to flee to Mexico were due to this, in addition to the fact that Jones was on probation for theft. Regina's father, Jerry Walters, was also interviewed. He told investigators that on March the 17th, he received a call on his home phone that he did not ignore. During the call, the man asked if he was Regina's father, to which Jerry replied yes. The man told him that he knew where Regina was, but added, "I've made some changes." The father asked if the young woman was alive or dead. The man hung up the phone. It is common for psychopaths to make this type of contact with family members, as their sadism is not limited to the physical, but they also enjoy emotional torture in the same way. Investigators contacted the telephone company to trace the call. However, this was a process that could take several days. Caroline had received a call In it, a man told her that she should meet him at 6:30 a.m. at a local store. Caroline recorded the call and contacted the police. Officer Jackson recommended that she not meet with the person, as it would be dangerous. However, the mother insisted, so several undercover officers were assigned to watch over her and protect her. The mother waited at the agreed-upon location, but the man never showed up. When the results of the tracking of both calls made to the parents came in, it was found that the call to the father was made from a gas station, while the call to the mother was made from a payphone. On April 23rd in Pasadena, Texas, skeletal remains were found near a river. Upon examination of the skeleton, it was determined that the age and weight matched those of a person with Regina's characteristics. However, forensic tests ruled out that it was the young woman. Months passed without any clues as to the whereabouts of Regina and her boyfriend Jones. On September 29, 1990, while a farmer was preparing to burn down his old barn in Greenville, Illinois, he found remains inside that appeared to be human at first glance. He immediately called the police. At the scene, a wire was found near the neck area. In addition, the skull still had several hairs that could be recovered. Its composition appeared to be that of a small child. Forensic studies determined that the victim was a young girl between the ages of 14 and 16, and that she had been strangled. The killer had done so with such force that the wire he used almost decapitated the victim. With this information, a report was sent to the various police agencies. The detective in charge of Regina's case sent samples of dental records to be compared with those of the skeleton found in the barn. It was confirmed that it was Regina Walters. The police began to develop a criminal profile of Regina's possible killer. Although Ricky Lee Jones was being sought as a possible suspect, there were investigators who did not believe Ricky was the real killer. It was a planned scene and showed a certain amount of experience. The killer was probably a man of at least 40 years of age who enjoyed control. On a highway in Pasadena, Texas, an officer came across a truck parked on a ramp. The officer was about to ask the driver to move his truck when he heard a woman screaming from inside. The officer asked the driver to get out of the truck and proceeded to arrest him. He was carrying a gun. The officer disarmed him and took him to the patrol car. While the officer was checking to see if the woman was okay, the suspect managed to get his hands to the front of the car and took off his seatbelt. As he was about to open the door to escape, the officer stopped him while waiting for backup. When backup arrived, they took both the woman, identified as Lisa Pinal, and the suspect to the police station. The suspect was identified as Robert Ben Rhoades, a 44-year-old man. Rhoades had been a truck driver for some time. Inside his truck, investigators were shocked by what they found. It looked like a torture chamber. They found chains, whips, pins, knives, and all kinds of paraphernalia used exclusively for torturing his victims. They also found bloody towels and hair that did not belong to the woman who was there at the time of his arrest. What the investigators did not know was that with this capture, they had put an end to one of the most twisted serial killers in U.S. history. Robert Ben Rhoades was born on November 22, 1945, in Iowa, USA. His father was absent for much of his life because he was in the army and called to fight in West Germany. However, his mother always took care of him. His father returned from the army and became a firefighter. During his childhood, Rhoades did not have many friends. His grades were excellent. By the age of 16, he already had a criminal record because he had fought in public and committed several robberies. In 1964, Rhoades graduated and enlisted in the Navy. That same year, his father was accused of assaulting a girl. His father took his own life before the trial. This affected Rhoades greatly. Although he had decided to give up his life of crime after his last offenses, he began stealing again after this event. In 1967, he was arrested for theft and discharged from the military for his behavior. He attempted to join the police force but was rejected due to his criminal past and dishonorable discharge from the Marines. He married in the following years and had a son. However, they separated due to Rhoades' absence. He would marry 2 more times, with Deborah Rhoades being his last wife. During this time, Rhoades worked in supermarkets, restaurants, and warehouses. It was then that he would find a job that would allow him to be away from home and explore different areas of the United States. Truck driving. At the same time, he began to develop a particular taste for BDSM. From a psychological point of view, It is very possible that his taste for BDSM practices existed long before this time. Sadism is a practice deeply rooted in an individual's personality, and personality development begins in the early years of adolescence. He began to subject his wife Deborah to all kinds of sadomasochistic practices. However, Rhoades did not intend to limit himself to torturing his wife. He decided to convert his truck into a dungeon exclusively for torturing future victims. He also prepared a special kit to carry his torture tools. Rhoades used to choose victims he saw as vulnerable, usually young people who had run away from home or were from low-income backgrounds. His charismatic personality allowed him to deceive his victims. In addition, as a former Marine, he had a strong character that made him appear more than intimidating, but rather respectable and of good values. He used to take a photo of them in the passenger seat before subduing them. Then Rhoades waited for his victims to fall asleep. At that point, he handcuffed and chained them by their hands and feet. He gagged them with a horse bit. Rhoades used to pierce his victims' lips and breasts with fish hooks and pins. He also used huge toys to abuse them orally and sexually. According to investigators, and as he implied to one of the surviving victims, he engaged in this activity for 15 years, an estimated period beginning around 1975 and ending in 1990. The day Officer Mike Miller stopped and arrested Rhoades, he not only captured one of the worst criminals, but also saved Lisa from certain death. When they raided Rhoades' house, they found bondage and BDSM magazines, handcuffs, whips, and a collection of photos of women with Rhoades' particular characteristics, with their hair cut and bruises all over their bodies. In addition, they were all chained. Among all the photos found, there was one that caught the attention of the agents who had been investigating the case. The photo of Regina K. Walters in a barn. She had a look of fear on her face, as if she knew what was going to happen to her. The discoveries in his truck and at his home only solidified the investigators' suspicions that they had just captured a possible serial killer. It was at this point that the police asked the FBI for help in connecting Rhoades to other crimes. Numerous human remains had been reported in the areas where Rhoades used to travel. One of these discoveries occurred in October 1990. Deer hunters found remains in Miller County, Utah. These could not be identified until 13 years later. Tests were carried out, and it was determined that they belonged to Patricia Candace Walsh. She and her husband, Douglas Scott Ziskowski, had been reported missing in 1989. Ziskowski's remains would be found later. However, the discovery and identification of Regina's remains was the key to the investigation. It was confirmed that Rhoades had been in the right places at the exact times when the calls to Regina's parents had been made. This, along with the photographs of Regina in the barn found in Rhoades' house, placed him at the scene of the crime. Investigators realized that Rhoades was very confident. Like all psychopaths, no life is more important than their own. This is important to mention, as most of them deeply fear the death penalty. For this reason, many investigators mention that if they cooperate, they could avoid the death penalty. With Rhoades, this technique worked. Rhoades confessed to the murders of Regina Walters and her boyfriend, Ricky Lee Jones. He also confessed to the murders of Patricia Candace Walsh and Douglas Scott Ziskowski. Rhoades' record of stops was checked and matched more than 50 reports of missing persons. Despite suspicions, Robert could only be linked to 4 of them and was tried only for the murders of Regina and Jones. The families of Walsh and Ziskowski did not want to go through the painful process of a trial, especially considering that Rhoades already had 2 murder charges. Rhoades was tried and sentenced to 2 life sentences. He is currently 80 years old. Investigators and serial killer experts claim that Rhoades is most likely responsible for more than 50 murders, although he has never revealed the exact number. Most organized serial killers consider murder to be a profession. That is why they can spend hours conducting research, developing plans, and devising strategies that revolve around their fantasies, but logic knowledge. This is not only reflected in their murders, but also in their choice of jobs that allow them to have greater reach, greater impunity, and less risk when committing their crimes. When Rhoades decided to become a truck driver, it raises the question of whether he chose the job because, at that point, he had already decided to become a serial killer. If so, it raises the question of whether, when he tried to join the police force, he did so with the same intentions.